Good evening and welcome to this live broadcast of Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reid, of course, and it is Labor Day, September the 4th, 2023, as we broadcast from what I often call behind the enemy lines of USA Inc. So welcome to this broadcast. I'm sorry. Yeah, give me just a moment. We're actually live right now. And this is Labor Day. And let me share something with y'all, fam. The topic of tonight's show was going to be Labor Day. It makes sense, right? To talk about labor fits in with politics and whatnot. So y'all know I have to subscribe to a lot of different politicians and stuff online. And y'all know Tim Scott, who's just actually below, not that far, maybe 100 miles, 200 miles in South Carolina. Fam, y'all know we broadcast from North Carolina. That's our home base. But I was on Twitter today and I'm like, his campaign is so tone deaf. And it was talking about how he will destroy unions. So the majority, we have unions here where we live in. There's a Freightliner, it's called Freightliner, but it's really Daimler. And a lot of people I went to school with work there. Some of the people I know are actually union organizers and officers in the union. And so my daughter worked there. Again, a lot of people. This is my hometown. So I know that the union jobs pay more, have better benefits, and just a whole lot more than workers who are under the North Carolina law of what's called at will, work at will state and what have you. So anyway, I just thought it was real tone deaf for a presidential candidate like Tim Scott to just on this day, you know what I'm saying, Labor Day, and the history and the violence that, workers have faced in trying to organize for better wages, for better working conditions, for just so many what I would call human rights. And so for his campaign to put out that message, that's not a message to the regular working man and woman. That was a message to the billionaires, because let's make no mistake, in my opinion, that's where the problem starts. It's the ones who profit the most and don't pass on some of their wealth to the workers. And productivity has gone up over the years, worker productivity, but I tell you, so yeah, Tim Scott, if I had an award for dumb comment of the week, you would get it. So listen, fam, we're going to talk to attorney Chiquita Hall-Jackson, just a little bit about her. Just met her virtually, but been reading up on her. But she is the founding attorney of Hall & Jackson and Associates, PC, a creator of Blow the Whistle Law, a social justice advocacy brand with the tagline, see something, say something, blow the whistle on workplace discrimination and harassment. And she is known as the Discrimination Disruptor. Now, she's a graduate of Southern University Law Center, got a JD in Northern Illinois University, certificate in diversity and inclusion from Cornell University. Shout out to Cornell West, who I think used to be a professor there, but he's running for president as well as an independent. She has studied abroad in international criminal law and constitutional law. And my new abolitionist family, y'all know that I got to ask her a question related to constitutional law. She's a multi-award winner, top 40 under 40 for 7 years in a row. The first Black president of the National Employment Lawyers Association, the Illinois affiliate. She's a past mediator at the Louisiana Attorney General's office and a past law clerk, Cook County State's Attorney Office, and a speaker on DEI trainings and speaking engagements. And in her spare time, I mean, with that kind of resume, y'all, I was very impressed. But in her spare time, you would think, dang, where did she find the time? Because she's doing a lot. All of that I just talked about, it's a lot of work that go into it. So, but she still takes the time to educate the youth in her spare time on their legal rights through her nonprofit, Whatever It Takes Scholars LLC. And her place of origin is Chicago, Illinois, which is the setting of that movie I keep telling y'all to make sure that y'all watching. That's Judas and the Black Messiah, which is a film that's focused on Chairman Fred Hampton, who was assassinated by Chicago police. So anytime I get to plug Chairman Fred in the history of the Black Panther Party, y'all know I'm gonna do it. So yeah, so let's go ahead before we get into some questions and what have you, and welcome her to the broadcast. This is her first time on Black Talk Radio News. And Ms. Hall-Jackson, welcome to Black Talk Radio News. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me just adjust my audio a little bit because you're coming in a little loud. So my first question to you is just congratulations on the success that you've had for a relatively young person, and and how you're giving back to the community. So thank you so much, for what you do and how you try to impact the world with the gifts that have been given you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I can't hear you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now. Thank
Okay.
you. You're welcome. So the first thing that I want to ask you is, what does Labor Day mean to you? And I'm gonna be honest with the listeners always, and honest with you. My family never really celebrated Labor Day. I think everybody's aware of Labor Day because there's always a Labor Day sale, it'd be all over the television and commercials and what have you. So never really celebrated it. But as I began to educate myself after my so-called schooling, I do understand the history, the importance of a Labor Day and what that all signifies. But in your words, what does it mean to you, this important holiday that many people observe?
I appreciate your honesty because I'm gonna be honest, my family might have a barbecue. I even traveled on Labor Day as just another day off of work, but never with the meaning of what Labor Day stood for. So I think it's just in the Black community overall, we just didn't really give it a true focus on what the meaning was, but just saw it as another day off. But by me being in this arena of employment law, I finally got an opportunity to determine and actually take the time to look into it. And it simply is just a day to thank workers for their hard work throughout the year that they do, and especially those who are part of unions and unionizing and becoming one and asking for protection in their place of employment.
Yes. So, shout out to the local listeners in Gaston County, because I know it's a number of you, because you tell me you listen. But a friend of mine, Pam, shout out to Pam Morgenstern. She shared on her Facebook profile some history about, I think she shared it in the NAACP group, but shared a picture of Lorraine Mills, that strike. And I mean, it was, I guess, historic enough for it to have a Wikipedia page. So yeah, but that was mostly white workers. And I just want to take a step back and mention something about the African-American community. So when these things like Lorraine Mills strikes, where the majority of the workers were white and what have you, I think Black people, and from my studies, have not always been welcome into these labor units, that unions in the early days, especially the 1900s and what have you, because this is still the Jim Crow period after Reconstruction was destroyed. So I'm gonna throw it to you, attorney. Do you think that might play into why the African American community don't really celebrate or get down with Labor Day like that?
I agree 100%. Exactly. And it's not just from 1900s to this present day. You try to run for a union position, 9 times out of 10, it's very rare, and depends. If it's a government entity, now you might have more Blacks and serving as union stewards and just being involved in unions. But when it comes to the construction, pipe fitters, and different things like that, we definitely exclude it. And yes, I think that's exactly why we do not mess around with Labor Day and celebrate it the way it should be.
Okay. All right. So let's get to some of the questions that I prepared. Could you share with us the inspiration behind founding your law firm, being one of the founding attorneys of Hall-Jackson and Associates PC, and your mission and how that fits in as a discrimination disruptor?
Originally I started off as a general practice. I just knew after being rejected in law school for 41 rejection letters, I applied for 2 jobs, both in the city of Chicago. I did not get those. And with the idea of someone telling me they're going to walk me through the door, they was in human resources department, I still didn't get those jobs. I didn't even get an interview. And so with that, I stumbled upon just hanging my own shingle and starting my own law firm. And I started off with a general practice doing some family law, criminal law, and every now and then I get some employment law cases. But as the years progressed, that was the cases that I woke up for and I was excited about. And actually did a lot of heavy research and just felt good about fighting on behalf of workers, and those especially that was 40 plus. In most situations, they was 50 plus, not too far from retirement, but they was pushed out the door for some particular reason. So those pulled on my heartstring. And as a result of that, in 2017, I announced that we're going strictly employment law with the idea, I thought that we'll do a little uncontested divorces, but that doesn't exist. Everybody fights over, property, whatever. So with that, as I continue to matriculate in the employment law field, I noticed that I was one of the few Black attorneys that actually was fighting on behalf of workers. Most Black attorneys represent management. So they serve as in-house counsel and they actually represent the corporation that most employees allege are doing wrongdoing to them, whether that's discrimination, whistleblower harassment, OSHA complaints about not having safe work conditions and things like that. And so I felt the need to stay over here and continue to work for our people and just be their voice. And so with that, as a lot of my colleagues got to go to different conferences, they'll tell me you need to find something else in addition to discrimination because they don't pay well, they're hard to prove. But I felt like I needed to be their voice. And so with that, one of my coaches named me the Discrimination Disruptor. And I just ran with it and been on the mission ever since.
Yeah, as I was preparing for the show and reading a little bit about, your mission and more about the work you've been involved in, I mean, this is more common than a lot of us know. And I can tell you personally, I know people in my family, you mentioned what someone reach a certain age, they push them out the door into early retirement. That happened to my mother. We were both working at the same dye lab or working for the same, this was an international corporation. It was actually, the headquarters was in Europe, but they got big operations here in the United States. And she worked there for like 25, 30 years maybe, and was pushed out the door and she wasn't ready to retire. And it's not like it was a physically demanding job. But then me on the same job, because she got me the job, this Black woman filed a sexual harassment lawsuit alleging that the vice president, had did some inappropriate things like giving her a sex tape and things of that nature. And I was called on the telephone. She gave my name as for the deposition. They called me and I told the truth. And I added some stuff like, I didn't have to, but I felt like I needed to because these were non-white women he was preying upon. And I noticed a pattern of like the workers who would be like temp workers, and they would be wanting to get permanent. So again, not to get into my personal life, but I bet you a lot of my listening audience out there can tell you stories like that. Are those uncommon for you to hear, those examples I gave you?
No, and thanks for sharing that. It's not uncommon. And the uncommon part is that people speak up for themselves and actually understand that that's not the norm and that you do
And
not
I'm
have.
sorry, I forgot to add one key point. And I got fired several months later after giving that deposition. I know that was the reason why.
No, I was curious. I was going to ask you what happened as a result of you participating,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's retaliation. And just like you probably felt that in your spirit and knew that was the reason, a lot of people experience that and they just don't, they go about their life. They sunk in it, they cry, they drink, whatever, and they move on, but no one actually goes after the corporations and hold them accountable. And so that's what I'm on a mission to get more people to know when to speak up and speak out and challenge their employer and actually do it.
Yeah, but I never did any follow-up or anything. I may have called a couple of law firms, didn't hear anything, but life happens. I was a young single dad at the time with 2 small children and then a third, that was with her mom. And so I had to find another job and move on from that. And thankfully, I didn't fall into what you just talked about, depression or taking out my frustration in negative ways that would impact me adversely. So next question, Labor Day, as we talked about some of the history, commemorates workers' contributions, but today we see a surge in strikes. What do you think are the key factors contributing to this increase in worker activism? Again, I was just talking about at the opening, Tim Scott sending out a message on Twitter that he's basically a union buster. And so we have been seeing a lot more activity over the past couple of years with workers of major corporations, going on strike. So let's hear what do you think is the increase?
I think the increase is just workers are being fed up. I was just talking about the Hollywood strike, and it's also in Atlanta and anywhere where writers and recording studios are. The idea that they have to make they have to gross $26,000 a year in order to get benefits. That includes medical, health, vision, dental, and so as a result of that, we celebrate them, we watch them on TV, we run to our TVs weekly to watch them, and come to find out they're not even grossing $26,000. And that's kind of sad, that's below poverty line. And they're just simply asking, can we make enough money so that we can qualify for the union, or reduce the amount that is the minimum that we have to make each year in order to get benefits? And you have these multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar companies, Sony and Paramount and all that, living off these people's hard work. And they have CEOs up in the mountains and somewhere, living luxury, having 3 or 4 yachts. But yet the people that's out there making them, doing all the hard work for them to make money, can't even afford to pay the rent. They're living 4 to 5 people in Hollywood in an apartment. It's just ridiculous. So I applaud each one of them, and I ask that they continue to strike until they see a change.
Now, your movement, Blow the Whistle Law, encourages workers to report wrongdoing. Can you elaborate on how this movement empowers employees to stand up against workplace injustices, as you just talked about? Because, the fear of retaliation often does prevent employees. And let me tell you, before I had some trepidation about giving that deposition because I got 2 small children. I'm the sole provider for my family. But I'm also looking at my 2 small children are women, Black women, and how, if someone had knowledge of something like this happening to them, then, I would hope somebody would say something. So can you elaborate on the Blow the Whistle Law?
Yeah, so ultimately it's an accountability movement. I'm just asking people as you see it in the moment. Like, I understand, I'm an employment law attorney. I know it's hard to conjure up inside of you the idea of I'm going to go after my employer and actually sue your employer. So I'm trying to actually deter more people from running to the EEOC and running into courthouses and trying to file suits, because a lot of the time we don't have everything we need in order to have a successful lawsuit. So it's more so asking people, as you witness the wrongdoing in the moment, speak up and address the wrongdoing in that time, and don't wait to this year-long pile of emails and text message and voice memos in your phone and now try to take it to HR. Take it as you see it, or at least if you don't feel comfortable going to HR, you don't feel like this particular situation is worthwhile, then it simply is going into the supervisor's office or the wrongdoer's office and say, I just witnessed what I just saw what you did, and I don't think that's proper. I wouldn't feel comfortable you talking like that, so I don't think you should talk to people like that. Because in most situations, it's more so a lot of people, they claim when I'm doing the deposition, supervisors, oh, I didn't know that was offensive. I didn't know I was offending them. If they would have just spoke up and told me, I would have changed my behavior. I don't have much history with Black people. I don't have much history with the LGBT community, whatever the situation may be. But a lot of times, if we just open our mouths and speak up in that moment, I think we can change a lot without having to go through litigation.
And I agree with that so much, but for different reasons, for setting the tone. Because I was working at a car detail shop for another Black man, but it was housed at a white owned dealership. And then I observed, his behavior with that person who we know is right leaning. I'm not going to say the man is racist. He treated me well, even gave me a gift for Christmas, but other people who would come, I just noticed he would, I hate to put it like this, sis, but stepping and fetching. And I was like, I'm not stepping and fetching. I'm not hee-hawing. And if they say something to me that's out of the way, I'm going to say something to them right then in the moment. And he was like, no, man, you can't be doing stuff like that. You have to be calm and you got to be about making that paper. No, I'm about maintaining my dignity and setting the bar for those people who don't yet know me, let them know up front. Would you agree with that approach?
Yeah, and I just think it's the matter. I always tell people, me as a CEO, me owning my own law firm, I have employees under me. It's plenty of times they do something I'm just not happy with. I have to collect myself if I need to take 24 hours, but I make sure I address it by the end of the week. And if I can, within 24 hours. So it is a way to do it. If you know that you're a hothead and the way things may come out of your mouth may be misinterpreted or taken as aggressive or whatever, then just take a minute to walk to the garage, walk outside, walk to the restaurant, take your break, and then come back and make sure you address it by the end of the day. Doesn't necessarily mean address it right then and there if you know that your reaction might not be the best, but definitely address it within 24
I hear what
hours.
you're saying, and I didn't mean it like that, but this was a conversation.
I don't think you mean it that. I'm just telling people because that's, I'm actually,
you're
like
right.
I said, as I educate people, because that's not just your concern, that's a lot of people's concern. If I do address it, I might not say it the right way, and that might risk my job. So that's why I don't say anything. But it is a way to cool off and then come back once you kind of calm and kind of address.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to Casey. Casey, you know me, Gaston County, you live in Gaston County, you work at the garage. And I want to give a shout out to him for saying something, because they had hired a racist mechanic. It's no doubt that this dude was racist and was saying some stuff. He never said no stuff around me, but he said something around some of the other guys, and I just heard about it. So I never had no interactions. But Casey confronted this guy when Casey's a white guy, confronted this guy when the guy tried to tell him a racist joke right there in the garage. Because all the Black folks, we work detailing the cars, them the two mechanics in that enclosure in that garage. And Casey came and told us too. So I let him know, and the guy was soon gone after that. So shout out to him, because we need that. It's not just about Black people standing up for themselves, but it's about people standing up for what's right and calling out what's wrong. Would you agree?
I agree 100%. I would agree 100%.
Now, you've highlighted the 5 signs of workplace retaliation. Could you provide examples of how these signs might manifest in different work environments?
As far as retaliation or?
Retaliation, yes. Like,
yeah, so
you speak up, yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off. So yeah, if you, in most situations, as you spoke about, you did this deposition, and prior to going to it, you had some fears and concerns. And what usually happens is you have the idea of this demotion. Sometimes the lateral move, they simply changing your title. You have failure to promote, you're up for their promotion and they put someone else in that position for you. Termination. And then ultimately, termination is usually the most worst thing that can happen to you. So those usually are the signs. It's just the idea of just not getting the opportunity to advance, and even the opportunity not to get hired. If you complain at the application process, you might not even get hired.
All right. All right. So recent events like the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on affirmative action have raised concerns about workers' rights. How do you view the current landscape of labor rights in the United States, and what challenges do you foresee in the new future, especially if somebody with the attitude of a Tim Scott becomes president?
Exactly. I think it's sad what's going on the Supreme Court, and I think it's very clear. I don't think no one is blind as to what's going on. It started off with Roe v. Wade. Now they're doing affirmative action, and I can guarantee workers' rights will not be far behind. And I believe that that's going to be next on the agenda. It might not be as within the next 2 years, but I want to say it's definitely on the agenda to start scaling back. You already see in Florida where it's no longer required that diversity, equity, and inclusion be at the mission at most employers, and definitely in the education setting. And so I just think it's going to kind of spill over into the workplace and how people are treated and what's required. And they're going to change the statutes, that's the constitutional statutes, the federal statutes that protect workers that's been around since 1964.
Okay. Now, the see something, say something approach is crucial. And that just reminds me of what they said about terrorism when, they were really hyping the terrorism so that we could, pass these bills, create homeland security. So that's one of the things I remember from all of that, promotion of that. See something, say something. Now, how can, let's say, business owners or corporations, how can they set the bar high for their own organizations? And do you think they should be educating their workforce about, whistleblower protections and their rights?
Of course, and making it clear, don't just throw it inside of a handbook, because 9 times out of 10, people are not reading their handbook, and they're definitely not reading it from page 1 all the way to the end. So I think it's definitely the responsibility of the corporation to have more trainings, and also workshops and just different programs to kind of focus on that and make workers feel safe. Even if they don't have a structure where you can report to human resources, at least an 800 number with a third party where people can go to and they can possibly feel better than telling their supervisor or someone in HR that they feel like just going to go back and spread their business throughout the company. So third party HR 1-800 hotlines are just as good.
Okay. And workplace bullying, because I've seen that as well, and harassment remain pervasive issues. How can companies create a safe environment for employees to report such incidents without that fear of backlash?
Again, that 800 number is so many third-party companies that you can just partner with. It's probably a nominal fee compared to staffing and human resources. I also play workshops on it. And then just the employers actually educating themselves, because a lot of times they put so much on the worker, but human resources departments and those directors of human resources and other people in those positions just do not know what to look out for themselves and how to address it in the moment. And when they fail to investigate it. And so when people that I represent, we ask for the investigation notes and things like that, they never even investigated the people claims. So they actually have to not only encourage their workers to speak up, but actually investigate it once they made the complaint. Talk to the witnesses that they list, go through the documents that they actually gave you, the emails, the text messages, to kind of help prove and not automatically say this is unsubstantiated without actually investigating it.
Right. I know something, if you're going to make allegations, and that's even outside the workplace, but even in activism and organized, these non-governmental organizations in that type of work, that's very important, is documenting. If you're going to make allegations about somebody, you better have some proof, especially if they're serious allegations. You better be, you should not, let me change my language, you should be able to point to bylaws or the employee handbook or the corporation's handbook And to back up these allegations, if you're going to make such allegations, which, in that same job, I was a third shift supervisor, and my workers came to me and was like, we supposed to be getting an extra $1 an hour to be working third shift. And I was like, okay, where'd you get that information? And it's in the handbook or the SOP. And I went and read it. And then I had to meet with that same vice president I was speaking of earlier. But at the end of the day, when I could point to that, they had no choice but to give us that extra $1 an hour. They wasn't just cheating the workers, because I was hourly paid. And here we are working third shift. So
I appreciate you sharing that story, because some people fail to realize if you equip yourself with the knowledge of what's in that handbook, it's so powerful, and what you can change and do for yourself.
Yes, I think that is very important. Last few questions I have for you. And again, I want to thank you for coming on today. And I do want to let the listeners know on the episode entry for tonight's program, I have linked to all of her contact information, the Twitter, the social media, the LinkedIn. So y'all can go right there. If you're listening somewhere else, you can go right there and have access to those links. But I want to give you the opportunity to tell people how to contact you before, we close it out with a couple more questions.
I appreciate that. You can find me at www.Chiquita Hall, Hall-Jackson, Chiquita Hall-Jackson, and my first name spelled just like the banana. Other than that, you can follow us on all social media platforms at Blow the Whistle Law, Blow the Whistle Law.
All right. So as the discrimination disruptor, what advice would you give to individuals who are currently facing workplace injustice? But again, I sound repetitive, but I think these are important questions, when they're hesitant to step forward and take action.
I just want people to understand that there's a difference between workplace bullying and discrimination. Do understand that workplace bullying, just like if a child was being bullied at school, there's no laws out there currently to protect bullying. And I always compare that to The Devil Wears Prada. It was a movie that Tyler Perry had with Janet Jackson, and she was this boss. She ended up catching AIDS. I cannot think of her name or the actual movie, but she was just real nasty to her employee throughout that movie. And that's just bullying. Some people don't know how to embrace their power. They abuse their power and they talk down to you. Unfortunately, if they do that to everybody and it has nothing to do with your race or your protected class, gender, sexual orientation, then unfortunately that is bullying, and it's not protected at any level, state, federal, county, anything like that, city. But then discrimination, if you believe you are being discriminated against, you have to compare yourself to somebody. And so many people go to the EEOC and they're having frivolous claims and they're getting these non-substantiated findings because of the fact that you're not comparing yourself to anybody. You have to compare your profile. So if I'm saying I'm an African-American female and I felt like my supervisor are treating all Black females or all Black people this way, then I have to show a list of white people or white males that they are being treated at a better level, whether that's attendance policy, they don't have to follow the same attendance policy, break policies, they're getting paid at a higher rate. You have to have some kind of comparison in order to have a discrimination claim.
Okay. Now, success stories. You've been doing this work a long time, and we've just basically been talking about problems, but important problems and some solutions and how to prepare for these problems, because they are kind of prevalent. So it's best to be prepared. We hear to see these news stories all the time, hear these stories from our people in our community. So it's very important, but you've been doing it a long time. What's some of the success stories that you've been a part of?
And you said success stories?
Yes. Yes, success stories.
I like to, one of my first few cases I like to credit is a client that she worked at a factory assembly line, and of course, in those particular settings, the respect for workers are a little bit less than someone who's in a corporation and sitting at a desk. And as a result, she had one guy who was just following her around. He made I'm not going to say a minor touch because I don't want to minimize her harm, but he only had one touching, and it was more so on her shoulder. And as a result, she rushed and filed an EEOC charge because her employer, when she told them about it, they kind of brushed it off. Her employer took advantage of the EEOC mediation process right away, and they actually went to mediation twice. And the first one, in that same mediation, just took a regular sheet of paper and came to an agreement that they will start them at 2 different times. He will have to take this extra path. Eventually, they start mocking her and isolated her and allowed this behavior to get worse because he was never punished for his part in it. He was never addressed. It was more so, let's coddle her to get her to be quiet and go sit down somewhere. And as a result, it started allowing other supervisors and other colleagues to now smack her on her butt, rub past her on this thin bench, and rub their private parts across her butt on a daily basis as they're trying to squeeze through small spaces. The comments, the unwelcome conduct of soliciting dates and holiday parties pointing to her. It just got so bad where she got to the point where she tried to cut her face. And she actually cut all her hair off, and her child just happened to find her and checked her into a 21-day facility, a mental health facility. And as a result, by the time we got to the deposition, my opposing counsel pulled me outside and was like, Chiquita, I really think we should resolve this. I don't see your client winning this whatsoever, but I do feel so sorry for her that I want to offer her something. And what they offered, my client was not willing to take, and we decided to fight it, and the judge found in our favor, and we ended up getting a six-figure settlement at the eve of trial. We was getting ready to set it for trial, and the judge wanted to fight this, but it was just, her willpower. After being stuck in a mental health facility, she couldn't go home for 14 days. It was 14 to 21 days, and without her kids, she couldn't have phone contact with the world.
Wow.
Ultimately considered crazy because the result of what someone in the workplace done to her. So that really put me on a mission, like, this is where I need to be and continue to fight for more people like her.
I could see why you would highlight her case. Last question. Now, in your bio, I mentioned that you were a constitutional lawyer as well. So 2013, this is 5 years after the founding of Black Talk Radio Network, which was founded in 2008. I happened to read the 13th Amendment, shake the dates now. It's 2013, and I happened to read the 13th Amendment, looked it up just out of the blue. Well, not out of the blue, but, some said, check out the 13th Amendment. So I read the 13th Amendment. I've always had a high reading comprehension. And I was like, they did not abolish slavery. It say except as. So as a constitutional scholar, are you in agreement that technically the 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery in the United States?
Yes. If you read it the way you read it, it's you are free unless you are in prison. And when it hit me, like you said, I studied abroad and I studied constitutional law, and even undergrad, that was the majority of my political science. We read the justice opinions inside out. I can tell you about Clarence Thomas, Scalia, all of them. I read all their opinions back and forth. And nonetheless, if you pay attention to the 13th Amendment, you will see that it is allowing for slavery to happen in the prison systems. And I remember taking a tour in law school of, it's in Louisiana. I can't think of the name right now.
Angola?
Angola, thank you. C. Murder is currently there. At the time we went, Boosie was there. They both was locked up. But once you enter those grounds, it was like watching the movie Life. They had these people in black and white jumpsuits. They was looking like sharecroppers, had the tools to go digging and plant. And once we got in there, we learned their history. They actually have them planting food, and they resell it out to the communities, to the market. They also have a rodeo each year where they're training the inmates to actually ride horses, and they compete and raise money for the state of Louisiana. It is the new modern day slavery. And to hear the stories, this young man, you have to have 25 years or more to be sentenced to Angola. So you had people as young as 16, knowing that they would never have freedom again. And one of the guys he was a DJ for Angola. They set it up for you. You're gonna live like you at home. They had a whole DJ in there. He was our tour guide for the trip, and he was saying how he told us his story. He rode from Texas with a friend, and he just thought he claims he thought he was just going to hang with a friend for the weekend. They was going to New Orleans, go down to Bourbon Street, and the guy was going there to rob somebody essentially, but he had no clue, and he took no part, and he sat in the car the whole time. But because he was an accessory after the fact, meaning that once the guy got back in the car with the goods, he didn't run and pick up a payphone or jump out the car and call the cops. He too got sentenced to 50 years. Wow. Just for being an accessory. But it shows that they was purposely putting these Black guys in there with the intentions that you're gonna farm for us, you're gonna entertain us, and so much more. From it. Yeah, and they profit from it. And then you find out how much they pay them. It's a penny on the dollar. They get paid no more than 10 cents. And at the time we went, I believe it was 6 cents per hour. And they have to get up at 6 a.m. and be out in the yard working at 8 a.m.
It's funny that you mentioned Angola and the state of Louisiana. This past election cycle, every 2 years, and several states, because since 2013, several states have changed their state constitutions, which basically mirrored the 13th Amendment, and they got rid of those exception clauses for slavery and involuntary servitude. Right now, there's a bill just got introduced in North Carolina here, because it says slavery shall be abolished, but involuntary servitude as punishment for crime. And I'm like, come on now, y'all don't treat me like I don't know that those words mean the same thing, you know what I'm saying? So on successes, we've seen several states since 2013 get legally, constitutionally abolish slavery after we've been lied to and miseducated for over 150 years. But funny you mentioned Louisiana, and we'll get ready to close it out. But I want to say it was Alabama, Mississippi. I'm not sure right now. Their names escape me, of the 5 states that had on their ballot to do what I'm talking about, change the Constitution so abolish slavery. And only Louisiana chose to let slavery remain in place.
Yeah, and Louisiana continued to profit to this day. And the crazy part, it's actually a paid tour. That's a part of their economy. It's a paid tour. You can, if you want to take a group of people right now and you say, Angola, I have this date in mind. What days can we come down? Wow. It's a $10 to $6 fee to get in, and they provide you lunch. I mean, some of the freshest collard greens I ever had, because they are farming the stuff there, and they have a group of cooks, and they provide fresh food every day that they raise on this farm. And it's pretty much the whole, they got yards and yards, fields and fields of lots and lots of property over there, and they just building up. And the crazy part is Louisiana, they don't have air conditioners in their sleeping units.
Right.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Listen,
me and my colleagues, we went for years, but no, we went and we cried afterwards. It's that serious. But no, you're not misinterpreting it. That's exactly what it means. And depends on this Supreme Court, how long, if nobody dies off, why Joe Biden and whoever else is in control right now, and this Supreme Court continue to go into the next presidency and beyond, you're going to see a lot of stuff changing and reverting back to what your grandfathers behind. So, yeah.
So again, I want to thank you for coming on. You've been a great guest and very informative, and I appreciate, you do that in your spare time as you educate the youth. So real quick, give out your contact info one more time and give us your final thoughts that you want people, if nothing else, to take away from tonight's discussion with me, that they take that away.
I'd say takeaway point is that speaking up for yourself is a form of self-care. You have to speak up for yourself, whether that's in relationships with your spouse, your family, your family members, or in the workplace, and especially in the workplace. You are there more than you at home. Speak up for yourself. And then as far as my contact information, again, first name CHIQUITA HALL-Jackson.com. And then you can follow us on all social platforms at Blow the Whistle Law, and that's at Blow the Whistle Law. Remember the law on the end because there is the blow the whistle.
Attorney Chiquita Hall-Jackson, thanks again for joining us. And please tell me that you'll be back on a future broadcast, because I could talk to you about an hour about abolitionism in the United States, and it sounds like you are a modern day abolitionist.
Thank you so much, and I'll definitely be back. We got something dropping real soon.
All right. Peace and blessings to you, and you have a great night.
Take care. Enjoy your holiday.
All right, fam. Please check out her website and the work that she do, and any way that you see that you can fit in to get in to support that type of work, then definitely reach out to her. So it's Labor Day. Excuse me. And Labor Day has some very violent history in the United States. So I would just, encourage people to just educate themselves on that history, even if it's not Black history. If it happened within these borders, educate yourself on it, and how workers have been mistreated and still being mistreated. But it's good to know that history. I do want to give a shout out to Hawaii and let the people on the island of Maui know we still thinking about them. I actually got on my shirt my daughters brought me back when they visited their family over there. I didn't even know they had family that lived on Maui. I thought my ex-wife's, all her family lived on Oahu. But all of them were able to escape the blaze. They did suffer, homes burnt down and stuff, but all of them were able to escape. And so I was reading today that The Rock and Oprah collaborated. I guess they put money in the pot, $10 million, and starting a campaign to help those people over there. And so, I'm gonna say this, there's people I follow on Twitter, they're political operatives, political activists. Some people are genuine, some people they getting paid by somebody, by some think tank, by some campaign, by some third party to take the positions that they take. And it was this guy who I've been following quite some time, and I would call him a liberal, Hillary Clinton supporter, Joe Biden supporter, but also taking liberal positions. But make a long story short, he was dismissing criticism of the Biden's administration's handling of that. Now, I don't have an opinion because I haven't been watching it that closely and to know what the federal government is offering up in terms of aid and what have you. So I don't have an opinion on that, but I do have an opinion about people and political actors dismissing what seemed to me to be valid concerns. Valid concerns. It should not be a partisan issue. These are partisan actors who talk like that. But nobody is above criticism, and to just simply dismiss these people who are victims of this fire, to dismiss any of their criticism of it is just absurd, and is kind of acting like one of them, settler colonialist attitudes. So y'all know I'm just tell the truth. So shout out to the people in the occupied kingdom of Hawaii, and I hope that you get the help that you need. And thank you to Oprah and The Rock and anybody else who is contributing to help that community. With that said, can't say when I'll be back on the air, but you know what you can do is you can subscribe to our social media, and from there you'll get a notice of whenever our upcoming program is about to go on, or when a podcast has been published, Three Guys Talking Smack, listening to music, I'm a fan of theirs. They just published a podcast in the past 2 days, but you can find Black Talk Radio Network's RSS feed on just about all the major platforms. So just, do a search for Black Talk Radio Network. That's the podcast, but primarily tune in. If you got that app, you can find our radio station, the live radio station, or you can just make it easy and just keep it locked right there on blacktalkradionetwork.com. With that said, y'all be safe out there. Peace and blessings to all.